Hello lovely people from the land of YouTube. I saw that you honestly prefer the robot voice, so I'll be using it mostly for the videos for now on. I noticed many of you didn't seem interested in the Lilith Days Part 2 narrated by me, so this is kind of a re-upload but in a different format as well, since I delete the screenshots and editing takes so long and I'm a bit lazy to do it over again. However, this video goes much more into detail of inner thoughts of each character. Since this is one of my popular series, I don't want any to miss what happened here, for when the next part comes out, it won't have many images other than who is talking as to make it less confusing. Enjoy and tell me what you think about it, if you prefer this long detailed readings or simple short texting stories. After many emotions were felt, the siblings are in the dining room. They have set up that each one would spend 3 hours alone with Lilith, but for now, they were spending some time together as a family. It was a calm and comfortable silence as they seemed to enjoy each other's presence after what felt like centuries, but they knew, whatever things they disliked from one another were irrelevant as they wanted to make the most of the time they were gifted with their little sister for the last time. Lilith seemed to shift in her seat as he rubbed her knuckles and looked down as if she were dubious of voicing her question. But after what felt like an eternity to her, she looked up and at her brothers. "Brothers, I was meant to ask," she softly spoke, which made each one of her brothers look at her with curiosity and a bit of concern. "What is it, Lilith?" Lucifer gently spoke, smiling at her to assure her that it was okay to tell them whatever she wanted. Lilith sighed deeply and said with a bit of a stutter, "How was it? When you fell, I mean." When the words left her mouth, there is an awkward, intense silence in the room. Beale choked on the water he was drinking. Satan seemed unfazed as he couldn't clearly remember his first years of life. Asmo looked like he wanted to be swallowed by the earth, and Levi and Mammon refused to make eye contact. Lilith quickly took notice and began to shake her head, but Lucifer simply lifted his hand in a stop motion. "It wasn't pretty nor easy," the eldest simply said. Lucifer looks around the room, silently asking his brothers for permission, as this wasn't only his story to tell. They all nod and Lucifer begins their story. It was many thousands of years ago. The brothers have been reunited in the Devildom after the great battle and the pact Lucifer had made with Devildom to save Lilith's life. They all looked down and done, as it was expected after they lost their only sister. Devildom sighed but tried to smile as to encourage the new residents of the Devildom. "Well, here is where you are going to be staying from now on. Welcome to the House of Lamentation," he said cheerfully as he extended his arms as to make a point. Lucifer growled and rolled his eyes, looking at Devildom with fire and anger in them. "We don't need that at your charity, Devildom," he spat. Maybe he was now bound to eternity to the Prince of Demons, but at least, for now, he would make it clear that no matter what the redhead did, Lucifer would never like him. Devildom simply chuckled and patted Lucifer's back. "Nonsense, as my right-hand man, I won't have you nor your family wandering around without a home," he cheerfully said and added, "and as you refused the offer to stay in the palace, this is the best second option." As it was expected, Mammon was the first one to voice his complaints. The tired-looking now demon looked up at the eldest. "Honestly, Lucifer, the palace is such a better place. Why we can't stay there?" he asked with such tiredness, not to argue but rather to understand why the choice was made. The next one, Belphegor, looked ready to pass out at any given second, leaning on Leviathan for support as she pleaded for Lucifer to make up his mind quickly. "Please let us stay here, I am tired and want to take my armor off," the now youngest begged. The Beelzebub interfered, holding the small bundle of range clothes. "Plus, we need a safe place to take care of Satan," he pointed out. Beel was holding Satan like a lifeline. After he realized they weren't going to win, he rushed with Belphi on his back to search for Satan, as he feared what would happen to the baby if they were banished before getting to him. Then Beel growled at Devildom when he got too close to his baby brother, still not fully trusting the prince. Lucifer sighed heavily, as much as it pained him to accept this place. His brothers were right, they were tired, wounded, and hurting. Okay, for now, we will stay here, but as soon as we can, we will find our place," he huffed, staring at Devildom as to make his point. "There is no need for that, but as you wish. If you need anything at all, don't hesitate in contacting me or Barbados." Diavolo assured with that ever-present smile of his. This simply made Lucifer's anger rise, but tried to keep his composure for his brother's sake. "We won't be needing anything else from you," he spat. Diavolo backed up a few steps, lifting his hands in a surrender motion. "No need to get all aggressive, Lucifer, I'm just trying to help," he said. Lucifer scoffed and looked away. "Well, I've seen what your help costs," he added sourly. Diavolo sighed in defeat, looking at the group with pity and worry. "This place is for all of you to heal and get used to your new powers and lives. Take as much time as you need. For now, I shall be off." Diavolo leaves and gives the keys to Lucifer. Lucifer sighs and herds his brothers inside the House of Lamentation for the first time. It was big enough to house them all comfortably, for the time being. It did have an eccentric aura to it, but nothing they couldn't handle together. Belphegor gave a long yawn before addressing his oldest brother. "Lucifer, I am tired, I'm so tired," he said, looking pale by now. "I know, Belphegor, let me check everyone for injuries, and then we can all rest," Lucifer assured, looking worriedly between all his brothers. After a few seconds, Belphegor fell to the ground, loud clanking heard as he was still wearing his heavy armor as he fell. Belphegor. Mammon was the first to reach, launching himself to catch his youngest brother. Satan started crying at the loud and sudden noise as Beel sees with an utterly terrified expression at his collapsed twin brother. There were thousands of thoughts running through the Sun Twin. Maybe he couldn't protect Belphegor as well as he had thought. What if these were the last moments of Belphegor's life, and he had not only failed Lilith but his twin as well? He stood there, frozen in place, unable to move as Satan cried harder and harder in his arms. It wasn't until there were soft snores that Beel let out the breath he hadn't realized he was holding and he could move. He passed out. Lucifer, the adrenaline of the battle must have finally blown out. Mammon pointed out, holding Belphegor's head over his lap as he looked up at the oldest with relief in his eyes. "I mean, after all that we've been through, I am also ready to sleep for a few centuries," Levi said as he moved his sore arms as some of his joints popped back in place. Beel was trying to comfort and calm Satan, gently rocking him on his hands. After a few minutes, the baby sniffles and hides his face in his older brother's neck. Lucifer could see the dire condition everyone was in. He just wanted to make the pain go away, so he clapped to bring attention to him, and his brothers immediately perked up and looked in his direction. "Okay brothers, take armors off, so I can make sure there are no fatal injuries," he said as he began to line them all up so he could go one by one. Asmo chuckled. A sudden thought that he couldn't keep to himself was voiced. "Oh Lucifer, you really want to see our delicious bodies for yourself," he said with a purr in his voice. Each of the brothers suddenly had their eyes on Asmo, surprised by the sudden perverted comment. Levi coughed awkwardly as Beel scooted away from Asmo to keep Satan away from him as he dragged the sleeping Belphegor as well. "What the F did you just said, Asmo?" Mammon seemed to voice the disgust everyone was feeling towards the out-of-place comments. Asmo looked completely mortified by his comments. He began to take some steps back as she lifted his hands and shook his head. I don't know where that came from. I am sorry," he said almost in tears. Lucifer sighed and pinched the bridge of his nose. "It doesn't matter, I just want to make sure you're all okay," he said as he gave an inquisitive eye to his brothers for them to calm down. It took a few minutes, but after shedding their armors, Lucifer noticed that they indeed had many injuries that would need immediate tending, otherwise they had risks of infecting. He wouldn't allow them to suffer any longer. He took a deep breath, concentrating on the feeling of his now demon magic. It felt different, but he closed his eyes and focused on the still sleeping Belphegor. The other brothers could see how much Lucifer was struggling to heal them. The magic was erratic and they could feel it, and Lucifer looked more and more drained by the second. By the time Lucifer was finished with Belphegor and turned to Beel, he looked pale and about to pass out at any given second. "Lucifer, stop, you can't keep going," Levi cried out, grabbing Lucifer's wrist away from Beel. The two had a stare-off, Lucifer angry at the sudden outburst of the third oldest. There were a few tense seconds, but Levi didn't back down, and Lucifer's expression softened, looking sorrowful. "But I must. I am the eldest. I must make sure you're all safe," he cracked, slightly trembling. "But you have already done that," You found us among the battle and brought us here, Beale pointed out, grabbing Lucifer's shoulder from behind and giving it a comforting squeeze. Lucifer looked behind him, all his brothers worried for his well-being just as much as he was for them. Lucifer began to sob and cry. He was pathetic, he couldn't even help heal his brothers in this state. Oh, how deep had he have fell. If not for us, you do it for Satan. Asmo pointed out. He needs to feed on your magic to survive. Beale nods at the statement as Satan coos in Lucifer's direction with his big and shiny green eyes. The baby was something completely new for them since he was born a demon but had been feeding on angel magic until now, so they were all a bit nervous about how he would react to the change. Levi smiled softly and hugged Lucifer to further calm him down. We can all spend the night together to make sure we are all safe, he suggested. Asmo nodded enthusiastically and joined the group hug. Yes, let's search for the biggest room and make it like a camping trip, he said chirpily, which made Lucifer slightly smile at him. But this isn't a camping trip though, Mammon said, trying to convey this would be now their home, but Levi took it as a way to dismiss the idea. Shut up, stupid Mammon, he hissed at the white-haired demon. Mammon blushed out of anger and started butting heads with Levi. No, you shut up, I was trying to lighten the mood. Mammon defended himself. It was a back and forth of sometimes you're just so dumb. Oh yeah, tell that to my face. I am, that's how stupid you are. Lucifer groaned, he was far too stressed and tired to deal with these petty arguments. Suddenly there's a loud growl, just like a celestial lion. Lucifer bolted in front of his brothers and opened his wings to protect them. His heart started beating fast. Had the angel sent the celestial lion to finish them at their weakest moment? Lucifer wouldn't allow it, even if he had to lay down his own life to give his brothers a chance to escape. But then the growl is behind them, and Beale blushed intensely as his free hand touched his stomach and tried to curl up in himself. I am sorry, I am hungry, Beale said, shifting awkwardly in place. Lucifer instantly relaxed. When was the last time any of them had something to eat? During the battle, it was hard to tell, no wonder it sounded like a beast. Whoa, Beale, your stomach has never done a sound like that before. Asmo said, surprised, but with a little giggle in his voice. Levi scratched his head, looking at Lucifer. Do we even have food in this place? Lucifer was about to answer, but Beale took the words from his mouth. Yes, we do, I can smell it. Beale quickly responded. Lucifer nodded and addressed Mammon now. Okay, Mammon, take her brothers to the living room as I go get us some food, he instructed as he started to head out of the room. What do I get in return? Mammon asked with annoyance, which made Lucifer stop in place and turn to give an angry look. Excuse me, he growled. Mammon, quickly noticing his impertinence, backtracked and said, I mean, sure thing, Lucifer. Sorry. Lucifer lifted his brow and went to find the kitchen. Once there, he prepared many sandwiches for him and his brothers. All the ingredients were typical of a demon's diet, but it made his stomach turn as it was food neither of them were used to yet. It was until he was alone that he broke completely, sitting on the floor as he let out all the tears he couldn't shed in front of his brothers. He had to let it all out now, he had to be strong for them, and no matter what anyone thought, he had to put the example. Meanwhile, in the living room, the others were setting up blankets and pillows on the floor, making it look like a nest rather than a bed, but that way, they could all be closer. Levi was the first to break the intense silence in the room. So, did anyone find Lilith's body? He asked sadly. Everyone else paused and Beale began to sob and cry uncontrollably, wiping his tears with his free hand as Satan looked up at him, cooing worriedly at the redhead and patting his face to try and calm him down. I am sorry, if only I had taken that arrow, she wouldn't have. Beale choked on his words. He had left their sister to die, and it was his fault. He chose Belfi over Lilith. He wasn't fast as Mammon. He wasn't selfless as Lucifer. He was a failure. Mammon quickly tried to defuse the situation. No. Beale, please calm down, it is not your fault, he pointed out, trying to pick up Satan, but the bigger demon had an iron grip on the baby even at his vulnerable state. But it is though. I let her die. Beale cried more. Satan simply laid on his shoulder in his way of hugging the gentle giant. It was foolish of us to assume every one of us would make it out alive. Belphi sluggishly yet darkly said, having awoken as he helped set up the place for them to sleep. Please, Beal, we must be strong. Asmo said, plopping into a couch as he pulled Beal down with him, playing with the red strands of hair of Beal's head. It was then that Lucifer returned, bearing the platter of food. He set it down on the side table and sighed defeatedly. Asmo is right for now, we are staying inside the house until we are fully recovered. The war might be over, but now comes a bigger challenge. The tension that fell on the room was palpable. What do you mean by bigger challenge? Belphi mockingly repeated, looking dead in the eye at Lucifer. This one in exchange explained his many thoughts. We are now in the Devildom, therefore, demons know we are here, they might want to get revenge on how angels have treated them for centuries. Asmo blinked in confusion. The 7 of them rarely commuted with demons and their affairs, there were other angels in charge of that. The only one who had interacted with demons before was Lucifer after all. But we didn't know most of them, why would they want to get it out on us? He asked incredulously. 'Cause that's how demons work, and I don't want any of you taking unnecessary risks. Lucifer sternly said, looking over his brothers. The group agreed to do as asked. They ate and fell asleep, exhausted after the many weeks of the war. After some days the brothers had chosen their rooms and installed themselves at a house. To say it was weird would be an understatement. They all seemed to be drifting apart, each one on their little world and anguish. But Lucifer gave them space. After all, everyone had their right to grieve their loss in their way, and once they were ready to talk again with each other, he would be there. One day, the tense peace of the house was broken by Asmo screaming from his room. Lucifer! Lucifer! Please help! Asmo cried, curling up in his bed. Lucifer quickly came rushing in, his heart pounding in his chest, thinking the worst had happened to his brother. Once he entered the dark room, he approached his crying brother. What is it, Asmo? He asked worriedly, looking for anything that might be wrong, and his heart sank. Asmo rose, scratches and red marks over his body, his bedsheets covered in tints of blood from where Asmo had hurt himself. I am so hot and bothered all the time, no matter what I do it doesn't go away. When Lucifer touched Asmo, the youngest moaned and blushes heavily, cringing at his reaction, and tried to push the oldest away. What can I do? I hate this feeling. I feel dirty. It is so uncomfortable. He said, holding his head, trembling in place. He used to be the most beautiful angel in the heavens. Now, he couldn't even stand to look at his reflection in the mirror. Having shattered them, he didn't deserve to be beautiful anymore. Lucifer was lost at words, looked sadly at Asmo, not knowing how to help his brother. Have you tried taking a cold bath? Was the first thought that came to mind. Asmo glared at Lucifer. #I have nothing is working. I am disgusting. I am horrible. I hate this demon form. I hate it. I hate it, he exploded, lashing out at Lucifer, throwing whatever he had at hand into the walls, shattering them by the impact. Please, Lucifer, please, make this horrible feeling go away, he cried defeatedly. Lucifer tried using his magic, concentrating on creating a soothing sensation for his little brother. At the same time, he was strong enough to heal the wound Asmo had inflicted on himself. It broke his heart to see the state Asmo was in. This made him realize that maybe keeping his distance wasn't the best idea after all. He wrapped Asmo on a blanket and clipped his nails to make sure he couldn't keep hurting himself. Then he wrapped Asmo on a clean blanket as he cleaned the room and bed, opening the blinds of the windows. Even if there was no sunlight, whatever light that entered would cheer up Asmo in his mind. It feels a little better. Asmo mumbled, still holding the blanket closely. I will try to cool down a little bit, he stated, asking in his silent way to be left alone. Lucifer stayed for a few more minutes, but he had to check on the other brothers after all. Call me whenever you feel the need to scratch yourself again. I am here to keep you safe, he said, leaving the door open as he left. Lucifer went to check on Belphi, who was asleep, even if it was already late through the day. Lucifer kneeled next to Belphi's bed and touched the youngest forehead. There was no fever, but Lucifer had noticed that it was more and more difficult to find Belphi out of bed as the days passed. He didn't know if he should call for a medic, as it was worrisome how much Belfa spent in bed these days. Lucifer decided to go get something to eat for Belfa and wake him up himself, make sure Belfa was eating at least. As he headed down, he heard screaming coming from the kitchen. "I have told you, don't you touch my custard!" Beale growled, slamming Levi against the wall, grabbing him by the collar. Levi looked annoyed and gritted his teeth, but didn't try to get away from Beale. "Come on, Beale, it is just a cup of custard," Levi said. "I don't care, I was going to eat that." Beale spat out, anger in his eyes for something so meaningless. Levi slowly started getting annoyed, and argued back, "You eat as if you had never eaten before." This only seemed to anger Beale even more, but finally, let down Levi. "I don't care, I am hungry. I am always hungry. No matter how much I eat, I still get hungry," Beale said, with a tremble on his voice. Levi seemed to give zero fucks now and shot back with, "Oh well, tough luck, but if I must be without all the limited edition anime collection that I left in the celestial realm, you live without a custard." Suddenly, the cries of baby Satan needing attention echoed through the house. Lucifer and Beale immediately perked. "I must go check on Satan and Belfa, he hasn't woken up in hours. I am worried," the redhead pointed out. Levi rose a brow, clearly confused. "Why are you always I'm hungry? Why is he always sleeping?" Beale seemed taken aback by the sudden shift of the conversation. "I don't know, I think this is my punishment for letting Lilith die," he sadly said, and rushed out the kitchen without taking anything to eat. Even if he was hungry, if Satan needed him, food could wait. He wouldn't fail his younger sibling this time, he owes so much to his family. "I won't fail you, my little brother." Lucifer was heartbroken as he heard this conversation from the kitchen's door. The fact that Beale hadn't even noticed him as he passed by was worrisome. Satan wasn't Beale's responsibility after all, it was his, and what he first thought it was a way to help, Lucifer realized it was an unhealthy coping mechanism Beale had made to prove he could protect his family. Lucifer grumbled, as much as it pained him to do it, he wouldn't allow Beale to spend unsupervised time with Satan. Lucifer then notices Mammon coming out of a room carrying many valuable-looking items, which made him raise a brow. "What are you doing, Mammon?" he asked in a stern voice, which made Mammon jump in his place. "Ah, Lucifer, don't mind me, I'm just looking for things to decorate my room," he said, in that tone you hear someone when getting busted doing something wrong. "Have you been taking things from around the house as well?" "Many of the most valuable things have been missing," he pointed out, crossing his arms in front of his chest. "I mean, maybe I have been having this need to have more stuff," he said, blushing, trying to hide something behind his back. Lucifer quickly took notice, but he waited, hoping Mammon would show it on his own. "No matter how much I bring to my room, it is never enough. I just want more and more and more." "I don't understand why," he said with doubt in his voice. Lucifer looked sadly at Mammon, he sighed, combing his hair back with his fingers. "It must be the demon part in all of us, everyone is changing, not to mention our demon form seemed to rise the need each of us seemed to present. It's like we are the opposite of when we were in the celestial realm," he hypothesized, looking at Mammon confused expression. "Will it ever be enough? Will we ever be satisfied? Why haven't you been acting differently? Why is it only us?" he asked miserably, trembling and looking pleadingly at Lucifer. "I don't know. I don't know. But I must ask you something," he said awkwardly. Lucifer knew Mammon wouldn't like what he would say next, but he needed to make sure the other were safe even if he wasn't there. "The prince has summoned me to the palace, I will be working by his side from now on," he said, waiting for the inevitable backlash that was about to come. "What? You can't do that. What if he tries to hurt you?" he argued, grabbing Lucifer's shoulders. Lucifer looked down, noticing the thick envelope of money Mammon was holding. "I have no other choice," Lucifer said sternly and looked at Mammon's eyes, waiting for his own explanation. "You can tell him to fuck off," Mammon said in return, evading Lucifer's questioning look. "I can't," was Lucifer's response, clearly ashamed of it. Lucifer, please, don't leave us alone. We are still scared," Mammon pleaded, holding on to Lucifer like a lifeline. "I am sorry, Mammon." Lucifer hugged Mammon, trying to ease the other's worries. But then Lucifer noticed the handwritten note on Mammon's back pocket, with the words whore in big red letters. Something in his mind snapped, and he quickly took the note. What is this? He asked, shocked as he read the note. Someone was blackmailing Mammon. Mammon, please tell me this is not true. Who hurt you? Lucifer asked, incredulous, his anger boiling. Mammon quickly took the note from Lucifer's hand, blushing and looking ashamed. I was curious. And I remember passing through a diamond shop on our way here. I just wanted to see it up close. He tried defending himself. I understand you might be curious about our new world, but this is exactly why I asked you to wait. In the note, some lowly demon was asking Mammon for money and other sexual favors. In exchange, they wouldn't share some extremely perverted pictures Mammon had made in exchange for some jewels he wanted. Lucifer looked about to pop a vein, but not because of what Mammon had done, but he wanted to kill the demon that was toying with his brother. I will take care of this, he said angrily. But Lucifer, they might. Lucifer lifted a hand to silence Mammon, leaving no place to argue. Give me a name was all that Lucifer said afterwards. It wasn't easily understanding their ever-present needs as demons, but Lucifer took it in his hands to help his brothers get through it together. Not to mention some neck he broke to ensure Mammon's reputation to stay intact. Back in the present day, Lucifer keeps telling Lilith about various different incidents that happened through the millennia, and how they eventually turned into the fear and respected demons they were known for today. Of course, I couldn't tell them why I couldn't deny Diavolo at the time. Lucifer said, with certain shame in his voice and a small blush on his cheeks. Belphi chuckled at the awkwardness Lucifer displayed, but then turned to see Lilith. Little by little, we got used to the new feelings and powers we had. He clarified, holding Lilith's hand between his. And soon enough, it was like we were always meant to be this way. Asmo clarified, a bright and proud smile on his face. Even if the first years were the worst, they all were happy with their current lives. Levi then playfully punched Satan's shoulders and added. Saga grew up pretty fast, and refused to be cuddled by anyone else but Beel. He laughed. Satan seemed to blush at the comment and cough to clear his throat. Even if it was true there was to need to embarrass him in front of Lilith after all. I was trying to compensate for my failure of letting you die, I guess. Beel said awkwardly, rubbing the back of his head as he refused to make eye contact with Lilith. Lilith was on the verge of tears. Listening to her brother's story broke her so many times, yet, she admired their fortitude to keep going. Oh guys, you are so strong. I don't know if I would have been able to endure such a drastic change. She gulped, trembling, and wiping her tears with her sleeve. Satan quickly offered her some tissues, but smiled gently at her. Of course you would have. He assured. Lucifer walked behind Satan and some led as well. You are our sister after all. With that, everyone shared one last smile and hugs, before the first brother dragged Lilith to spend their last hours together.